Because when the next turmoil comes, when the next crisis comes, people will seek a safe haven. There are not many things left except the U.S. dollar. It's not a safe haven, but people think it is, so they will flee there. It will go up. It will get overpriced. I hope I'm smart enough to sell. It might even turn into a bubble, depending on how bad the crisis is. But Elijah, I don't see many more times in the future when the U.S. dollar can have a period of great strength, because the debt is so staggering, and in Washington they're increasing the debt at unbelievable rates. It's never been done in the history of the world, not in recorded history of the world anyway. And this cannot end well. It's never ended well for anybody else, and it cannot end well for us. Well, the bond market worldwide is a gigantic bubble. Bonds have never been this expensive in the history of the world, anywhere in the world. So we've never seen anything like this bubble. So that's bubble number one, and perhaps the biggest. Property in many places, as you point out. Seoul, New Zealand, many places, property is in a bubble. Not everywhere, but we're certainly having property bubbles develop. Shares are developing bubbles. Not all shares. In America, things like Amazon go up every day. Google and Tencent. In Asia, Samsung, these stocks go up every day. But many stocks around the world are not in bubbles yet, but I can see it forming. I can see all the signs. The only thing I can see that's not a bubble, the cheapest asset class, commodities. Silver's down 50% from its all-time high. Oil is down 50%. Sugar's down 70%. Some of the prices in these commodities historically are remarkable, if not unbelievable. So the only thing I can see where there's not a bubble is commodities. Some things are starting to go up. Copper's now made an all-time high, but we're told we're all going to have electric vehicles in the future. Well, electric vehicles use several times as much copper as a regular car. So I don't know if that's a bubble. If the reality is the huge demand, then I don't see how you can call copper a bubble, given that production is not going up. Well, that's a valid point. The all-time high on silver was about $50 an ounce. It's about 25, 26 US an ounce. But when silver made its old highs, the dollar was worth a whole lot more than it is now. So who knows, on an adjusted basis, the old high in silver, 60, 80, I have no idea. But no, there's no question. So adjusted for what's happened to the currencies, most commodities are even cheaper than just the nominal value. Well, I have some silver that I'm holding in my hand as we speak. Yes, I do have some in the closet and under the bed. I'm an old peasant. When things go bad, I want to own some silver and some gold in the closet. Now, the politicians and the academics say, nah, silver and gold are worthless. Don't bother. Well, all of us old peasants know that when things collapse, we better have some gold and silver under the bed. So I have some, and I will buy more sometime in the future. I have no idea when. I know about the movement. I hope they drive silver to 1,000, because I certainly own plenty of silver. I think it's probably unlikely. It's very difficult to do something like that with a huge commodity like silver, but it can be done. The Hunt brothers certainly drove the price of silver up an enormous amount. It can be done, and it has been done. If they do it, more power to them. If it gets too high, I'll have to sell. I don't want to sell my silver. I want it for my children, but I'm aware of it. Squeezing the price of silver, which is a huge international commodity, will be difficult, but more power to it. The Hunt brothers did it. Then again, I have absolutely no idea. I've never gone down to the vaults and done the audit. I hope somebody does, including I hope the ETFs and the exchanges do. Hooray if it's not actually there. That means the price will go higher and higher. As I say, I own silver and gold. I hope I have an opportunity to buy more before this is over, but there could well be physical shortages. I just don't know. I haven't done the audit. Please, somebody go down and do the audit, then we'll know. course, if they do the audit and they find out it's not there, it'll be too late because the prices will be going straight through the roof. Well, if and when there's a currency collapse and or a government collapse, throughout history, all of us peasants know gold and silver, we better have some gold and silver because that's the only thing that's going to save us. Maybe some wheat will save us. Maybe loaves of bread will save us, but gold and silver is more likely to be the same thing. Yes, when things collapse, people know. I mean, there's some kind of innate historical memory that people realize how to save themselves. If and when the U.S. dollar collapses, which is probably going to happen, maybe not in my lifetime, but probably in my daughter's lifetime, people will know they got to have some real assets in order to survive. I mean, Elijah, this is not the first rodeo I've seen. This has happened throughout history, and I presume it will continue to happen throughout history. Well, we're already having inflation. I mean, if anybody who shops, you know there's inflation. The government says there's no inflation, but the government lies about it. All governments, and they have reason to lie. I mean, practical reasons. As you know, many government obligations are tied to the inflation rate. So if they say there's no inflation, they don't have to pay as much. So they all have reasons to lie, and they do. Anybody who shops knows there's inflation. Look at entertainment, anything, education, food, restaurants. You know that there's inflation out there, and it's going to get worse. Throughout history, when we've had huge amounts of money printing, I mean, it's very simple. It has always led to inflation. Maybe it won't this time for some reason, but it always has, and I suspect it will. We will probably eventually have a deflationary bust. There's no question. It's always worked that way. You have huge inflation, it eventually gets popped for whatever reason, and then there's a huge deflationary bust. I suspect that will happen again. Maybe somehow the federal Washington can somehow get prices down and drive prices down into deflation. But the problem with that scenario is central banks and politicians don't like deflation because they lose their jobs. So they do everything they can to print, borrow, spend. Look at what's happening now. You think that the Federal Reserve is going to wake up one day and say, okay, we made a mistake. We're not going to print huge amounts of money now. We're not going to spend all this money. We're not going to borrow all this money. I cannot imagine a single politician in Washington saying that. Maybe one would, and maybe she would get elected because it's sound policy. But within 6 months, she would be assassinated or thrown out of office because people would say, no, this is too much pain. I don't want to suffer like this. And they would go back to inflation. Inflation's the easy way, and inflation has always been the way unless it gets out of control. Deflation? Well, normally when markets collapse, and if there's deflation, nearly everything goes down a lot. And normally when you have huge bear markets, everything goes down, including gold and silver. Go back in previous bear markets in the last century or two, whenever there's been a big bear market, gold and silver have gone down at least for a while. Eventually, when the money printing starts again, they always go up and go through the roof, and are great ways to protect yourself. But if there's gigantic deflation, most all assets will go down at least for a while.